Welcome back. But people buying their houses, maybe not their first house, although we have seen a big influx of first-time home buyers. Ryan Leopold's still with us. Ryan, we talked about first-time home buyers, some of the big things they need to do. It's a little different if you already own a house. Mm-hmm. Where do some of those biggest changes come in? I mean, they're going to know a little bit more, so you're not quite as deer in the headlights, but there's still some pretty important strategies.
Well, I'd say in some cases it's almost worse that they've gone through the process before because they're kind of used to the way it was.
You want my tax returns?
2003 through 2004. It was easy then, especially if you were looking to buy your next home. It was easy because you could put your house on the market, sell it in 2 or 3 days, take the cash, go make an offer on something else, and it was kind of easy. So the fact that somebody's been through that before, I think. My intention with this segment is to make sure they understand how things have changed and that they understand kind of their options and they create a plan accordingly.
And again, I mean, it does kind of start with that understanding the financial part. Because, we were even talking at break with Kevin Hergert and yourself and me about people who self-employed. Some people think they make a lot more money. They can afford a lot more than they can or their tax returns and they write everything off. Yeah. So really, that what you can prove is different. So it still kind of comes back to meeting with that lender. But you had talked about a few things, a few strategies that people are going through or people are utilizing.
Yeah, well, let's think about it this way. In the numbers, somebody's current financial position will dictate the options that are available to them. But I have a home that I currently live in, and I want to buy a new home. What are my options? Okay, so the way I look at it, there's about 3 or 4 different options they have to choose from, and you have to decide, what can you do, and what is the best thing for you and your family long term. Okay, so strategy number 1 is renting your current home and buying your next home. Okay, so simply putting a renter in there, having that offset the mortgage payment, having enough money saved up that you can simply use that to buy the next house, and it's a pretty streamlined, easy process if you're okay with being a landlord.
Which we've talked, it is another job. Being a landlord is not just put somebody in. It's always leaky toilets, but I say, it's leaky toilets. It's electrical things not working. It may seem simple on the outside, but you have to really be able to commit to doing that.
Yeah, and we both own investment properties. We both own rentals. We know the positives and we know the negatives. I think a lot of people just don't understand. So I think a good lender and a good advisor is going to help clients out understanding what to be prepared for if they decide to go down that road, because it could be a really good road. Why do you want to sell at such low prices now if you don't have to? And if you can keep both and you're okay with doing it and you qualify, then maybe it's right for you, maybe it's not.
What if someone doesn't want to be a landlord?
We can hire a property manager. They're relatively inexpensive and pretty easy to deal with, and they take care of everything for you. I think the reality is sometimes you have to manage your property managers, even if you just have one home. But I think it's still a great strategy and it's still a great way to go. I've done both. I've managed them on my own. I've used a property manager, and I think it's property dependent.
And so, and then the other side of it is some people just need to get rid of their house. I mean, there's the old traditional way that still works. Sell your house before you buy another one.
Yeah.
And, I guess if you're working with a lender, one of the keys there is understanding how much cash you're going to end up with for a down payment. Is that actually going to parlay into that next house the way you expect it to? Because, with houses being on the decline for a few years now, sometimes people aren't getting what they thought they were going to out of it. And that really changes what they can do with the lender.
I think everything is about a strategy and kind of being transparent about where you are now and where you're trying to be. And I think I've seen some really interesting situations that someone says, okay, I don't really have a down payment, so I have to sell first to get the equity out of my house before I can think about buying. And then they're out looking so they go through the due diligence about getting a good idea of what their home can sell for. They get pre-approved to buy that next home. So that's all good to go. And then there's this huge waiting period as they're falling in love with all these houses, but their house isn't selling in a timely fashion because they didn't price it right. I think you need to work with a great listing agent who understands your situation. I had a friend and a client the other day who went through and they want to buy badly, but they don't want to sell their home for what inevitably is going to be the price they're going to have to sell for. And I talked to him, I said, look, even if you sell for less than what you think you should, you're still getting $100,000 out. You take that $100,000, you put it down as a down payment on a $600,000 place or $500,000 place at 4% or below interest rates, and you're buying at 2002 prices. Let a little bit go to gain a little bit over here. In the long run, it could be a real win for you. And some people need to at least understand that could be an option. Our job is not to tell them what they should do. It's to tell them what their options are.
Right. And in the financing arena, there certainly are a lot. And I think you'd make a really interesting point is, from this guidance standpoint, as we'd kind of been talking about, a guide should also be able to tell you that, hey, you know what, maybe you aren't really in the position where you're going to take out the equity and get the house you want. A guide should be able to say, no, this is an option, but it's going to kill you. I mean, look at all your other, look at your other income or your lack of income. Mm-hmm. This isn't something you should do. You really don't have enough money to maintain something like this. And so I think part of it is, and I know you've been really good at this over time, is from a mortgage perspective, it's not just about the mortgage. It's not just about getting somebody pre-approved. There's some, as you said, financial due diligence that really should go into it.
Yeah, and I think that comes to, if you're referring to strategy number 3 or option number 3, which is, okay, I want to go buy a house. I don't want it to be contingent. I don't want to sit there and have to wait till I don't want to put an offer on something else and wait for mine to sell before I can buy that one. I have equity in my current home and I make really good income where technically I can qualify for both properties. So another strategy, maybe it's right or wrong, I mean, we got to talk about all the options, is take some equity out of your current home, use that equity to buy the home you want, knowing that, you've already done the due diligence to see that, hey, if we put it on the market for around this price, it's going to sell within this period of time.
And you can afford to make both payments for this amount of time as well. A huge piece of that.
Yeah, but also understand that even if you go and buy a house and it closes March 15th, for example, your first payment on the new house isn't going to be really technically owed till May 15th because you're not going to make a payment April 1st. Technically it's going to be the first couple weeks of May. So you have 2 months lag where you're not going to have a double payment. And if you work with a great listing agent, they should already give you a good idea that your current home should probably at least be under contract within 30 to 60 days.
If it's a good home.
If it's a good home and it's priced correctly, and a good listing agent's going to let them know if it's strategically priced correctly. So again, there's no right or wrong. Our job, what I believe our job is to understand their situation, what their client's objectives are, and give them their options and talk through the positives and negatives with each option.
Well, it's a little bit like I was talking about earlier about the ski trip I was on yesterday. A guy, the guys we're with can point out the cliff. I guess I have the option of going off of it once I see it.
Good analogy.
But now again, if somebody wants to avoid danger, be as safe as possible, you don't have to take on 2 mortgages. I mean, you can still make an offer on a house. Talk a little bit about that contingent side of things and maybe taking the safest route.
Yeah, that definitely is the safest route. The real estate agents you have on the next hour, that may be a good question for them as well. But from a lending standpoint, all I'm doing is qualifying you on the home that you want to buy, given how much money you think you're going to get when your current home sells. And that's how we're qualifying you. And so really it comes down to you put an offer on property B, saying it's going to close within the next 90 days, and now you get your current property on the market. Now you just hope that a buyer makes an offer on your home between now and the time when that property is supposed to close. I just think it's rare these days that very many sellers will take that offer from the sales side, but it still happens from time to time. It's just, I think it's rare.
Yeah. Well, again, it's giving people those options, understanding how if they want to be safe, more aggressive, and taking advantage of some of the financing that's available.
Yeah.
We have to go to break, but when we come back, Kevin Hergert's going to come back with us. we're going to discuss a little bit more about this, professionals guiding people to the right answers. My name is Ben Brash, and that's Ryan Leopold. You're listening to Brashonomics.